So, welcome to all of you that are here. Um, the topic today is about um, detected graphics. Yeah, yeah, okay. This topic is handling difficult customer situations. Basically, if I was going to summarize the entire sort of lesson, and we'll go through all of this, is that there's the basic rule that the customer is always right. Now, we won't say that that's always 100% true. Customer is not always 100% right. That can't be. But in our way of approaching them, we need to sort of take into account their point of view. And so we don't sort of confront them and tell them how they're wrong in the typical way of dealing with it. So let's see this in this chapter. So points here to be made about having a positive attitude. You'll recall from previous lessons talking about the can do. Now, this is a very, very important point here, is about responding, not reacting. It's kind of a stoic approach to things. And if you get interested in sort of classical literature, you could read a lot of stuff about stoicism. Um, but the idea being that we don't sort of uh, focus on negative things at all, and we don't let other people upset us. And that's a good approach to have as a person in customer service. And I don't know if this has ever happened to you, but I'm not proud of it, but I have on certain occasions dealing with somebody in customer service and not happy with what their company is doing, or maybe not happy with what they're doing. I have on occasions been somewhat like this, be a bit angry. And but what I've found is, with very, very few rare exceptions, the customer service people have not sort of returned that anger, but have sort of maintained professionality. And sort of even at the end of our discussions, which could have been heated, I've had sort of things like, is there anything else I can do for you, kind of thing. So, I mean, that is part of the training for being a customer service representative. It's sort of maintain your calm and sort of so it's looking at it not in a sort of a personal, taking things personally point of view, being able to control yourself and having, as I mentioned a second ago, that stoic point of view, which, as I said, I do recommend you sort of read up a little bit on stoicism if you want to understand exactly what this is about in dealing with difficult customer situations. So, as it says, we all have bad days, and our customers are going to come to us. Sometimes they're not going to. Sometimes, I mean, so this is the other thing, right? What is it that makes us happy? What is it that makes us unhappy? And I'm talking about in a transactional sort of moment by moment view. What is it that I was happy 1 second and now I'm not? Well, why is that? And that's because feelings of positive emotion is another word I'll use for it instead of happiness. Feelings of positive emotion in humans are generally on the basis of goal orientation. So that is, I have in my mind that I want something to happen. That thing happens. I feel positive. You could call that happy. I have in my mind that something must happen. I have to report to do this report. Something happens that stops me from doing it. Frustration. How do I feel? Probably not happy. The person that comes to you at the service desk, that's how they feel. Usually, the reason they're calling you is because something's not going right. They're probably not going to be happy. I mean, I think you can just take that for granted. Now, if you want to see that in a sort of a smaller sort of scale in your own life, just imagine yourself. You don't have to imagine too hard, but get in your car and drive across Doha, and somebody cuts you off, and then you get stopped by this. I mean, it doesn't, if you're sort of putting your sort of emotions into that, it's probably not going to make you too happy. All right. On the other hand, if you sort of just look at it as, oh well, I'm in my car and I don't really care when I get there. If I get there in 10 minutes or I get there in 20 minutes, it doesn't matter. I'm just driving down the road and here we go. And those things won't bother you too much. But if, on the other hand, you get in your car and you need to be at the college in 10 minutes time, and somebody holds you up at the then you probably your emotion might not be so positive. And so you have to think of what's happening with our customers in that way. They have a report that's due, and the computer system is not working for them. They're not feeling so happy. I mean, that's very understandable. And we don't take that personally, that it's that that they're going to express that when they come to you, and it might feel like they're talking about you being the problem, and it's not. It's the problem is that they need to have this report, and therefore we do something to try and get them that. But yeah, as it says here, each situation is unique. We need to apply empathy to that situation. Empathy as opposed to sympathy. They are two different words that sort of sound the same, but have slightly different meaning. In the service desk, we try to understand ourselves and we try to understand our customers. We
Mr.
can't
Mark,
really. You're asking me a question?
this related to the basic human needs, right?
Very good. We talked about that in the first lesson. That everybody needs to be feel that they're understood. And so that's why we have people at the service desk that are people instead of some computer sort of artificial intelligence solving the issues. I mean, I guess the good thing about an artificial intelligence would be that it's not ever going to get angry at anybody. But on the other hand, it's not really going to understand their own sort of feelings of frustration, which is something that a human can do. All right, yes. So they have a need to be understood. And as we understand them, we can work together with them to solve their issues. Yes, very good. All right, so why would customers have that feeling of frustration? Like I say, like they were held up in traffic kind of thing, right? Well, here's a lot of reasons. Um, we promised them something and we didn't give it to them. We made them wait a long time. They're using the computer system, the telephone system, and the menus are confusing, or the computer system menus are confusing. They expected something and it didn't happen. So I mean, all of these things are going to um, affect their mood. Now, this is about what do we do when we come across those people, and this diagram I think is pretty good. The idea there's a difference between saying to somebody, I understand you, and you actually trying to understand them. And so it's a kind of a slightly different thing. I mean, trying to understand somebody is more than just sort of saying, ah, I understand. It actually means going through a process. And going through the process is mentioned here. What is that process? A process is you're going to listen to them. You're going to ask them questions. You're going to go through that active listening stuff that we talked about. And then at some point, through your active listening, you're going to come to sort of an agreement that we actually understand what the problem is. Only at that point can we go into the resolution of the problem. And so here in this diagram, it shows two things there, which is the offer and the check, which is where you offer, this is what we can do to solve this issue. And then they either agree or not. And if they don't agree, well, we have to make a counter offer or come up with something else. Oh, oh my. So that was sorry, that image had a link on it. Um, Little process here: listen, apologize, solve, and thank. So notice here the sort of the time, and I meant to mention that in that previous slide. We have what we try and do is not sort of react. And so we have a bit of a time where we sort of think about what's happening and sort of come up with an intelligent response. And our intelligent response is not going to sort of be sort of chopping people's um, discussion off on them or sort of being in their face or anything like that. So we listen, we apologize. Why do we have to apologize? Well, the customer is coming to you in the service desk because there's an incident. I mean, that ideally that incident shouldn't happen. So it's okay to make an apology. It's not us making an apology is not saying that we're bad people or anything. It's just saying that we're acknowledging the fact that the system has let them down. So we apologize, and then we work on how we can solve that issue. At the end, we thank them for working with us, and it should be real to thank them when they come to the service desk, because by them coming to the service desk, they're helping us to make our system better. I mean, they're alerting us to the incidents that are occurring, and we use the word incident there. You know, an incident is an unplanned interruption with or a break in the quality of a service or something. They're bringing that to us, and that's helping us to make our system better. So they are kind of helping us. Here's some things there right now. If you have a very, very angry customer, and that's quite possible, then really, really good idea is to just let them say their piece without interrupting them at all. And sort of yeah, without interrupting them at all, but let them go and let them know that you're sort of listening to them. So that's part of that active listening thing, but sort of let them say their bit, because that's going to get them to the point that we talked about before where they feel like they're understood. So here's a thing, and you've probably had this happen. I've had this happen to me a few times. Somebody complains, and this might happen to you in your interpersonal relationships with people that you know, friends, family, whatever. Somebody complains something, and you talk, and then you know, maybe you rebut them or whatever, and then they make the same point. They keep saying the same thing. Well, that's an indication to you. If somebody keeps coming up with the same thing over and over and over again, keeps making the same claim, that's probably because they feel that you haven't really understood them, right? They've said it, they have to keep saying it because it's obvious to them that you don't understand as much as they say it, and maybe they're not articulate in their words to say it in a different way, so they just keep saying the same thing. So that's a sort of a warning sign to you if they keep saying that they feel that you haven't understood them. And so at that point, you need to sort of switch over into some kind of, how can I understand them? What is it that I'm not understanding here? And once you try and do that, then you're likely to sort of make that breakthrough and actually do understand them, and then they'll know that you understand them, and then you can, a lot of the heat will come out of the discussion pretty much at that point. So yeah, we do let the customer vent because they need to do that. They need to do that because they feel that they're not understood. And that's the thing, right? When the customer comes in, they've got this problem. That's the biggest thing in the world to them right now, right? I mean, they don't want to hear some other thing from you. That's the big thing for them, and that's the thing that you need to sort of focus on. And so some of the things that we can do when they're doing their little vent is we can do this, go on, I see, I understand. We talked about that as part of our active listening. The cartoon here with Lucy in it. Peanuts cartoons were a big thing from M. Schultz from the 1950s to the 80s, I think. And Lucy was this sort of almost a sociopathic person in this in this cartoon, because she's just unable to how you say to she's unable to empathize with anybody. And so have a look at that cartoon, and I'm sure you'll get that. It's Lucy was a pretty interesting character. um Somebody's chatting. I'm here. Yes, I'll mark the roll again in a minute. So part of that understanding them, and again, we've spoken about this before, part of that understanding them is sort of to acknowledge their emotional state. In other words, to say, I can see that you're angry, and yeah, maybe if I was in your position, I'd be angry too. That really goes a long way, right? That they have a right to their emotions, right? They have a right. Now, I mean, these things, I mean, within the constraints of the culture and the law and the society, people have a right to their emotions. You don't have a right to sort of go out, sort of swinging at people and abusing people, but you have a right to feel bad, and within the cultural norms, you can express that, and there is a limit, obviously. And maybe we talk about that, but and it's just not, I mean, I don't encourage you to go out sort of venting everywhere. As a customer service rep, people are going to vent to you. I don't encourage you to go out venting. Um, this, as I said, I encourage you to sort of read something about Stoicism, and you would find that there's sort of better ways to approach. There's more healthy ways to approach disappointment than with some kind of extravagant emotional response that's just not really healthy. But it will come to us from other people, and there's we can't control their emotional state, and so we sort of deal with it, and as I said, within certain boundaries. I mean, eh, we can't have people coming in and sort of abusing people. um, if that happens, we have to end that conversation and move to some other way of and this is the thing about societies, isn't it? We have to be respectful and all of the rest of it. um, all right, so what is important in this slide, the idea here, is about taking our time and pausing and responding, not reacting. Okay, so we pause, we acknowledge that they have this feeling of frustration. Yeah, you're frustrated. I understand. If I was in your position, I'd be frustrated too. Now, do I understand that this is exactly what the problem is? And so once we understand exactly, then these are some of the things that we can do to solve that. Um, then we get them to agree with some kind of a solution, and what we can do then is move on from there. All right, so once we've got past all of that anger management stuff, then we can get into actually solving the problem. The diagram here is just a standard problem solving sort of diagram. This could be used in any business situation. It's not unique to the IT service desk. And yeah, so what do we do if we have a problem? If we're writing an essay, if we're scientists trying to solve an issue, if we're a business person, we could break down a problem solving into these kind of steps. Gather our information about the problem, break the problem into manageable um, blocks, identify some solutions, choose the best of a bunch of solutions, take action, examine the results, and check. Um, yeah. Yeah, so what can we say there? Apology may work wonders. Yes, they're going to be frustrated. Um, Listen, yeah, basically, it's all about that. Um, I told you about this one just in the previous slide. If they keep repeating themselves, probably almost certainly because they feel that you haven't really made the effort to understand them. And so they're going to keep repeating themselves until you do. If they're still be upset, yeah, you haven't sort of made that clear to them that you are trying to understand them. And when I say made that clear, saying the words "I understand" is not enough. You actually have to go through the process of doing things that show that you're trying to understand by active listening, by trying to come up with a solution with them. Okay. All of these things are basically just so some sentences that we could use that sort of show that. Now, here's an interesting one here. If the person is using offensive language, then we can break that communication off, right? I appreciate that you're angry, but you know, I do need that we work together professionally on this. We need to work in a professional manner. um, I'll get somebody else that can deal with you. So we don't need to take abuse. And that's the point that was sort of made a minute ago. So be positive and focus on what we can do, and not being sort of too negative. You're wrong. We don't react to them. So once we have um, we've got through that, we may find that we want to come back to that with the customer afterwards, and that's what we mean here by repairing the customer relationship. So maybe we'll sort of touch base with them, uh, and sort of see if the solution that we've come up with is working for them. And so we have two terms there that sort of relate to that. We talk about follow through, and on think on the next step, yes, we talk about follow through and follow up. So follow through means that if we've been talking, and by the way, this is always comes up as a test question for whatever reason, but follow through just means that you have set a bunch of steps that'll bring us to the resolution of this issue, this incident. And the follow through means that we stick with it until the end and we make sure that that resolution is completed. So that's our follow through. Follow through is to make sure that it's completed. And so that could include calling the customer back afterwards to make sure that they are satisfied with that. Um, yeah. And then we could do our follow up to check afterwards to see with the people in that have been involved in it that that has worked and has not sort of reoccurred. And so that needs to happen. That's the point in this slide, is that we do need to do our follow up and our follow through and make sure that we close off our resolution of an incident. So if a customer is coming into you and they are being these things, they're upset, how do we stop that from sort of affecting us negatively? And so here's the points on that: being responsive, not reacting. So that's taking time out to sort of think about it rather than just sort of allowing our adrenaline or anything to get to affect. Staying calm and get ready. Now, what we can do is we can take a little bit of a break after we've had our discussion with somebody to sort of calm down a bit there. Um, so, yeah, this is all just about being positive. Um, Different people behave differently. And the thing is to sort of control our emotion. Again, I sort of, I do I do sort of encourage this sort of thoughtful response rather than emotive response. And this idea here tries to put that in a conceptual way, right? So as a human being, in the way that we behave, we have, I guess you could say, logical thinking and we have emotive thinking, and those are both important. But we have to make sure that they're sort of controlled. Yeah. Now, this actually also refers to sort of people's natural sort of tendencies to or talents, and so we'd say that uh, while we both have left and while we all have left and right brain controlling us, or we're controlling them. Um, Left brain, as it says there, people have this theory that your left brain part of you is more about logic and your right brain is more about emotion. And so, and for different people, one of those might be more dominant than the other. I'm not sure about that, but it's an interesting way of sort of thinking about it. I think where it's useful to somebody in the service desk situation is to bear in mind that you do have different sort of can be opposing sort of forces in our own minds that can work together or oppose to each other, and one being the rational approach to things, which is sort of step by step and methodical, and the other being the emotive force. And as I say, they're both important, but we don't want one to dominate the other to the point of it um, am I missing logical thinking? I hope not. I'm sure that's not what you meant. So therefore we talk about left brain people and right brain people, and the stereotype being, okay, so you have your liberal arts type thinking people who are very, very creative, but they might not be too logical. And then you have your people like Dr. Spock in Star Trek. Oh, that's a very old TV program. You might not be familiar with it, but if you were that this was a starship set in the like the year 2300 and something, and they're going at warp speed, which is faster than the speed of light around the universe, and meeting all kinds of strange sort of aliens everywhere. And one of these aliens they took onto their ship, and he was oh, I can't remember what, but I mean, he had pointy ears. And he looked kind of like a human, except he had pointy ears, and he was completely without emotion. Everything was just totally logical. And so, in the Star Trek series, they explored this idea of the emotional human versus it's totally logical. So, and you could see this by the interaction between Dr. Spock and other people on the spaceship. So you can look that up sometime if you want. And some people really like Dr. Spock, and some people found that he was just too, how you say, too sterile. But you would say that Dr. Spock was totally left-brained. Everything was just logic, and as opposed to your right-brain people would be the people that paint beautiful pictures and things like that. Uh, okay. Um, so what we can do if you've had a sort of it's almost like an emotional trauma, I suppose you could say, if you've been in this situation where somebody has been verbally attacking you, and this is the thing, you might meet them the next day and they're totally fine. It's just it's very very focused on a particular issue. It's issue related, right? And so that's the thing that we have to understand. This isn't because of you and them, it's because of issue which is standing between you and them. And if we could somehow see the issue from the same point of view, we could probably solve it. But anyway, so they've come and we've had this kind of almost trauma because they are opposed. Sorry, they are so upset and they're not able to sort of communicate that in a way which is positive. And so they've sort of taken it out on you. And then you've gone through the process in a professional way of defusing all of that emotion and then being able to come up with a solution to them. And that's physically, mentally draining. It's draining of you, and you afterwards you're going to maybe feel a bit tired. Some people will shake a bit. And so, what can you do? Well, you probably should disengage for a bit. So that's what this means here. Take a deep breath. Maybe take a sip of water. Maybe go for a little walk, some self-talk, if you found that that has really shaken you, okay? Because it will some people, being uh, maybe verbally, um, I won't say the word abused because we don't accept abuse, but verbally confronted, yeah, that can be sort of very tiring. And so you need to sort of overcome that. And so take some time for yourself, as it says there. Take a deep breath. Um, Maybe drink some water or whatever. Try and be positive about what you're doing, right? There we go. So self-talk, yeah, I don't know about that. Sounds like a good idea, right? Which is basically just being positive in the things, I can do this. As it says here, we can practice some things to make us more calm. Um, Listen to our calls, go through some sort of pick up some techniques. Yeah. All right. And then maybe have a chat with somebody if that was a particularly difficult one. And it's amazing, just talking to somebody else can often give us a totally different point of view, and we realize that it wasn't really that bad after all. So there's a lot to be said for sort of going and having lunch with your colleagues in the lunchroom, and just sort of talking about um, without being non-professional. So it would be unprofessional if you were in the lunchroom and you were mentioning the names of particular customers and things about them. But I mean, if you just said a customer, well, that could be helpful of sort of understanding how you approach that by talking to your colleagues about it and saying, I had this situation. I won't say who it was, but I had this situation today and these kind of things were said and this is what I did. And they might say, oh, yeah, that happens to me all the time, too. And, oh, really? And what do you do? Oh, well, I do this. those kind of things can be kind of helpful. Um, and there you go. I hope that that was a kind of a short me sort of flying through that. Um, I will just summarize to say that I really think the sort of the most important point there is sort of to be professional, be logical, and to take the time and not react. So reacting, that's where we're allowing our sort of fight or flight adrenaline response. If you feel yourself, your heart starting to beat, well, you know that that's that fight or flight reaction type of thing. We need to disengage from that and be a bit more thoughtful about it. Um, and I mentioned stoicism. I guess I'm a bit of a fan of that. And yeah, most people are okay. That's the other thing. The other thing you would find, and I notice this, people come and they might be confrontational, and you might think, well, this person's kind of like an enemy, right? But if you actually took the time and got to know them, you'd probably find that they weren't at all. And so we need to sort of keep that positive sort of attitude about the people that we're meeting too. That this is a person that probably would be a friend of mine if I took the time to sort of know them a bit better. And that's actually probably quite true about most of the people in our that we come across. They're having a not a great day. Um, things are happening so that they're not getting these things that they need. And yeah, and we just happen to be in the way. And that's a difficult customer. So I hope that sort of is useful and helpful to you. Uh, there's a little bit there about consistency as well. Any sort of questions or comments? Maybe you guys